everyone, and welcome to SUNUP. I'm Lyndall Stout. Wheat fields across Oklahoma are very dry and there is not much moisture in the forecast. We begin with an update on the crop with our Extension small grain specialist, David Marburger.
Well, right now we're still in winter dormancy overall. That's the good news in all this. Even though we've been pretty dry across the state, the plants are still in their winter slumber and not taking up a whole lot of nutrients and water. In some cases, we don't have a whole lot to take up, but that's the good news. So right now with the wheat crop, it's really tough out there. I know the crop ratings we got from the USDA weren't very good, and a lot of people might not feel like it right now. But if we were to get a rain right now, we could still end up with a pretty decent crop. But the bad news is that rain doesn't look like it's in the forecast. So it's presenting some challenges overall. One on the forage side to get any kind of forage for cattle and grazing, and then thinking about dual purpose. Are we going to have any of a grain crop this year? And one of those things to get us to something like a forage later in the season, or that grain crop comes back to nitrogen management. And this is the time of year where we're typically thinking about top dress considerations, and that's been a very tough decision so far this year with how dry it's been.
Well, and with that, whenever you do make your top dress decisions and applications, you do need that rain. What are some of the things that producers need to be thinking about when it does come to making those decisions for their top dress?
Yeah, well, like we mentioned, it's tough. It's one, do we pull the trigger? If we do have to, there are some things we can do. We can stream on some UAN and on a lot of conventional tillage if we're in no-till. It's a little bit tougher between the source, whether it go to urea or UAN. In a no-till situation, the urea might have a little bit of edge over the UAN. But one thing we can do right now is be putting out nitrogen-rich strips and letting the crop tell us if we need to be putting out nitrogen. That way too, if we can hold off, that's the question. If you can hold off and wait until we can get this nitrogen down in front of a rain, but we can put that nitrogen-rich strip out and let the crop tell us. But yeah, that's using nitrogen-rich strips would be a good opportunity for those nitrogen-related management decisions.
And right now, the plants are still dormant. They're not using the moisture that they will later. Kind of talk about the soil temperature target to when the plants start to wake up from their dormancy and when they start to use that moisture.
Yep, so right now a lot of our soil temperatures are 50 degrees and lower, and once we start getting close to that 50 degrees and higher, that's going to start kind of waking those plants back up. And right now, so you mentioned soil temperature, air temperature as well. The plants this is when they're most resilient to those, or resistant to those cold air temperatures. So we may see a little bit of leaf burning out there, and as long as that crown is still healthy and alive, those plants are still alive. They can still make it, even though it might not look as well above the soil surface. But once we start raising that soil temperature up 50 degrees and above, and we start coming out of winter dormancy, if we happen to get cooler and those soil temperatures go back down below there, we can still resist some of the cold temperatures, but we'll never get to that level of resistance that we are currently right now. So when we start warming up and we get those cold snaps, we could start doing more damage to the crop and hurting ourselves on potential there.
I know that there's not like a magic date for all varieties. They're all going to be different. But when's kind of that critical time if we don't see a rain event?
Yep. So we're going to come out of winter and we're going to start growing again. And if we could get some rain when we start waking those plants up and have some good soil moisture, that's going to give us an opportunity to tiller. So some of those plants where we're a lot smaller than what we would like to maybe see going into winter, that we could give ourselves an opportunity to tiller there. And once we transition from that vegetative growth to that reproductive growth, that's really when we're going to start seeing a big increase in water uptake for the plants. And hopefully we'll have that moisture in the soil by the time that occurs this year.
So really, it's all waiting on a good rain, like we say in Oklahoma.
Yes.
Well, thank you much, David. And for more information on the wheat crop this year, visit our website, sunup.okstate.edu.
Hi, I'm Al Sutherland with your Mesonet weather report. As of January 30th, Kenton had logged 124 days without a quarter inch or more of rain. For all of western Oklahoma, the count is over 100 days. There were some spots with some recent rain, all down in the southeast. A 30-day rainfall map through January 31st shows those green areas with over an inch of rain. The areas that have gone a long time without rain are under a governor's burn ban issued January 30th, the red counties. A governor's burn ban places added responsibility and liability for fire prevention. You can link to the official guidelines on the SUNUP website. If your wheat was grazed and you're considering pulling cattle off for a grain crop, the Mesonet First Hollow Stem Advisor lets you know when to check wheat stems. On Wednesday, just a few locations for early group varieties were at the 5% probability, the ideal time to check wheat for first hollow stem. In 1 week, they are projected to be close to 50% probability, and by February 14th, the need to check early group varieties for first hollow stem will have moved a long ways north. Here's Gary with more information on our dry, droughty conditions.
Thanks, Alan. Good morning, everyone. Well, I'm afraid January didn't do us many favors on the drought side, so let's go right to the newest drought monitor report and see what we have. And it doesn't look good, does it? Most of western Oklahoma, at least the far western portions of the state, up in the northwest Oklahoma, into the Panhandle, that is extreme drought covering that area, that deep red. And in the rest of the state, most of that state in that darker brown, that is severe drought. So most of the state of Oklahoma at the end of January is now covered by at least severe to extreme drought. Only a few little areas of moderate drought left in far northeastern and far southeastern Oklahoma. Now, the rainfall statistics for January from the Mesonet show you the reason why drought took off so much during the month. Most of western Oklahoma recorded no precipitation, and then the rest of the state saw less than an inch in general. Only far southeastern Oklahoma up into east central Oklahoma saw significant rainfall, with the Mesonet site at Cloudy leading the way with 4.8 inches of rain during January. Shall we look ahead to February? I'm afraid we have to, and it's not good. At least for the temperature outlook from the Climate Prediction Center, we don't really see much indication of increased odds for above normal temperatures, really just out in the Panhandle and far southwestern Oklahoma. The rest of the state, no clear indication. But for precipitation, we do see increased odds of below normal precipitation for the month of February across the entire state, which is not good because February is one of our driest months. So all of our pleas for rainfall, snow, ice, anything didn't come through during January, so we'll make that plea again to Mother Nature. Please give us something during February. We'll take anything we can get. That's it for this time. We'll see you next time on the Mesonet Weather Report.
We've seen a good rally in wheat prices, and Kim, everyone wants to know how long will these prices last?
I think they'll last till they rain. If yield expectations go up after rain, then I think prices will fall off. But I think as we get into harvest, if we have a quality product, that means test weight and protein, I think we'll have our $4.20 wheat, which is what you can forward contract harvest wheat for right now.
Now, if the drought continues and 2018 wheat is below average, how high do you think wheat prices can go?
Well, I think the problem right now for flour millers is finding milling quality wheat, and we've got a shortage of that. And if we don't produce milling quality wheat, let's just say, for instance, we could import Russian wheat. Now, right now, Russia's loading wheat out on vessels on the Black Sea for $194 a ton. That's about $5.28 a bushel. Takes about around 70 cents to get it into Houston. So we could bring Russian wheat in for about $6 on the vessel in Houston. Take it off board, unload it, handle it, get it on rail cars, move it into Fort Worth area. We can get wheat into Fort Worth for right around $6.75 to $7 Russian wheat. And we could also bring in Argentine wheat. So I think if we have a short crop and we have a shortage of milling quality wheat, our prices could get up to that level of where it would take to import wheat, and that's around $6.75 or $7.
In your opinion, how likely is this scenario?
Oh, I don't think it's very likely that we're going to import Russian wheat. I mean, it just wouldn't be politically wise to do that. We may bring in Argentine wheat, though, if we have a real shortage. But right now, it's not very likely. But it is likely, if we have a short crop and good quality, that we're going to have $5.56, maybe $6.25 prices for wheat.
And the bottom line, should producers take advantage of this rally?
I don't think so, because they can forward contract right now for $4.20. If it rains, the price will go down, but their yields will go up, offsetting most of that lower price. But if it doesn't rain and yields stay low, their prices will go higher than this $4.20 that they can get right now, and they're going to need to take advantage of it.
Okay, Kim, thanks a lot. We'll see you next week. And now here's Brian Arnall with another lesson on the science behind soil nutrition.
I've previously spoken about soil pH. Now I will address why is low pH a bad scenario in cropping systems and forage systems in Oklahoma. Now, we call a low pH acidic. That's in most crops, that's when the pH drops below a 6. Now, it's not that the pH is bad necessarily. Remember, a low pH is when we have more hydrogen ions in the soil solution than we have hydroxyls, the OHs. Now, that's not the problem. The plants don't have hydrogen toxicity. What happens is when we have more of those hydrogens in soil solution, those hydrogens, those H pluses, react in the soil and help the release of aluminum 3+ and manganese. It's 2+. Now, what we have to worry about in Oklahoma are these aluminum 3+. We have a lot of aluminum in our soil already, but when you have a soil pH above about a 5.5 to a 6, that aluminum is in a form that is non-plant available and non-toxic. But when soil pH starts dropping below 5.5, the ratio of the aluminum 3+ that is in soil solution starts increasing. So at a pH of 5.0, there's approximately about 27 ppm, that's parts per million, of aluminum 3+ in the soil solution. Now, what's critical about that value, that 27 ppm, is that typically most of our crops, especially wheat, is sensitive around the 25 ppm mark. That means we're getting significant impact upon the plant because of this aluminum 3+. Now, the big thing to understand, it's not just that it's near that point at a 5, it's that when we go from a pH of 4 to a pH of 5, that's that step 1 in pH unit, that is a huge step in what happens to aluminum. Now, from a 5 to a 4, aluminum goes from 27 ppm to 27,000 ppm. Aluminum 3+ is going to be stunting the roots. It's going to make the roots, instead of a nice fibrous root, it's going to be stunted in clubs. Now, if you want more information on why soil acidity is bad, check out the SUNUP website at www.sunup.okstate.edu.
In the past, in the Cow-Calf Corner, we visited with you about the length of time that you would watch a cow or a heifer during the throes of labor before you'd actually bring her in and give assistance. And we've talked about that being about 1 hour for the first calf heifer and half that, 30 minutes, for the adult cow, a cow that's had calves before. We know that if a calf goes through a prolonged stage 2 of labor or a prolonged delivery process, that we'll have a calf that ends up with a respiratory acidosis. And that just means that during that prolonged delivery process, he was deprived of oxygen for quite a while, and there was a buildup of carbon dioxide and some of its byproducts in his body. One of the byproducts is lactic acid, and that's where the acidosis actually comes from. The blood pH of that baby calf will be lowered substantially, And if this goes on long enough, it can actually damage the major organs of the calf, including brain damage. Also, those calves that have this severe acidosis are often sluggish and slow to get up to find the teat and nurse. Therefore, they're slow to get that first milk colostrum that has all the disease antibodies in it that gives that calf some protection. Therefore, what we have is, if that calf goes through a long delivery process, a pretty good chance that that calf is more prone to getting scours or even respiratory diseases later in life. Research from Montana has given us a good indication of what happens to the cow if that stage 2 of delivery of the calf is allowed to go on and on and on and on. What they did was compare cows that were provided appropriate assistance at about the end of 1 hour if she hadn't made real significant progress. The others, those that were given late assistance, were allowed to go 2 hours or longer before assistance was provided. And what you see on this graphic is there was a 17% difference in the percentage in those two groups of cows as to how many were actually cycling at the start of the next breeding season. So a significant drop-off in the percentage that were ready to breed in the next breeding season. And it showed up in the pregnancy rates actually being lowered by 20% in those cows that were allowed to have a prolonged stage 2 of labor. So there's certainly reason, I think, to not let these cows or heifers just go on and on and on in the delivery process. Go ahead and check them after about 1 hour in the case of that heifer, 30 minutes in the case of the adult cow. Provide assistance. If you find something that you know that you can't handle quickly, call your local large animal veterinarian and get their help as soon as possible. Hey, we look forward to visiting with you again next week on SUNUP's Cow-Calf Corner.
The USDA released the annual cattle inventory estimates the last day of January, and Derrell is here to talk about it. Derrell, what did the report show?
Well, overall, the report showed that we continued modest herd expansion in 2017. The overall or all cattle inventory was up 0.7%. The beef cow herd was up 1.6%. The beef replacement heifer number was down about 3.7%. And if you work through all of the numbers and calculate an estimated feeder supply for January 1 of 2018, that was also down about 2.3%.
And then what are the main take-home messages, and expand on that a little bit more, the expectations for the 2018 outlook?
Well, I think there's a couple of things you can get out of this report. One is the beef replacement heifer number was down. Some people are taking that to mean that herd expansion is completely over. If you look at that beef heifer inventory as a percent of the cow herd, that's actually still at a relatively high level. To me, that says that there's still some potential for additional herd growth in 2018. I don't know that it has to happen, but I think the potential is there. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see very modest additional growth in 2018. The other thing is that feeder supply being down is a function of the fact that we placed cattle so aggressively in 2017 with the dry conditions and the lack of wheat pasture at the end of the year. We put a lot of those calves in the feedlot early. So we're actually starting with a little bit tighter supplies at the beginning of 2018, even though overall cattle numbers are up. And so that's going to help support the market. It just shows that we've done a very good job from 2017 on into 2018 at moving through these cattle numbers very, very effectively.
And speaking of dry, it's on everyone's minds again now, and drought expanding. How do you think that'll impact things this spring?
Well, you know, we're set up, unfortunately, with what could be a very bad situation if nothing changes. You know, we've sort of written off wheat pasture at this point. It was just really a very disappointing situation. But what's more important now is we start looking ahead to spring conditions. If nothing changes in the next 60 to 80 days, then we have a very serious problem. We're set up, unfortunately, much like it was in 2011. So we could potentially find ourselves around April 1st in a situation where we have very little flexibility, very little forage to work with, and not seeing any prospects for spring growth. So that's not a forecast at this point. We've got lots of time to fix this if we start getting some moisture, but we really need to be paying attention to it. And unfortunately, you need to think about a plan in terms of how you would move animals out or liquidate animals should we get into a situation where that becomes necessary.
Okay, Derrell Peel, thanks a lot. We'll see you again soon. Talking about food recalls today with Ravi Jadeja, who is a food safety specialist here at the Food Non-Product Center. And Ravi, let's just start with the basics. What is a food recall?
First of all, Lyndall, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to talk about food recalls. Food recalls are mostly voluntary action taken by the producers or distributors to protect consumer by withdrawing or removing the food product in question from the market. I said mostly because with new food safety regulation that is called Food Safety Modernization Act, now FDA can force food companies to cause recall.
Now, it does not necessarily mean though that the food is not safe to eat, right? Explain that for us a little bit.
Sure. It depends. So there are three different types of major recalls, or three different classes of recalls. Class 1 recall is being the most serious type of recall, and usually that is caused by a microbiological agent or allergen that can severely affect the health of consumer or even cause death. Class 2 recall, you still expect some sort of health consequences, but you expect the consumer to recover fully. Class 3 usually does not have any type of health consequences associated with it, and it's basically there is something wrong on the label that is not related to allergen, and it is not going to affect the consumer the bad way, but it's still illegal, so that's why companies recall that food product.
How do I as a consumer keep up with all of this when there seems like almost one a week?
Well, first of all, most of the time when we see recalls, those recalls are either allergen related recalls, because most recalls are because of undeclared allergen, and it causes approximately like 50% of the recall are because of the allergen, which is followed by pathogens. And usually it's a very good idea to actually register our email address with the USDA and FDA, and whenever there is a recall, then they usually send out an email to your email address and will let you know that do not consume this food product.
Okay, great. Some terrific information. Thanks for explaining it all to us. And to get onto that email list that Ravi mentioned, go to our website, sunup.okstate.edu. Finally today, we learn how a 4-H educator is mixing his love of music with the values of the 4-H program to not only foster talent, but also build tomorrow's leaders.
Check, 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 check.
Music really touches all the areas that 4-H is interested in, which is head, hands, heart, and health. Leadership, because just like in any other project, you saw them setting up the stage and the microphones, and it's the same process whether you're setting up for a county fair or a stock show or a performance. They're learning how to work together, teamwork. All these young people, whether they're a singer or a musician, they have a leadership role in Music Corps, even if it's just their instrument and themselves. They're a leader.
There is a house in New. We travel around Oklahoma and play different gigs at different places. Playing music makes me happy. I could just go play in the piano and be happy. So, my parents taught me how to play the piano with books since I was 3. So I was learning when I was 3, and also the guitar. And then I learned how to play the drum a little bit and the cajones and the ukulele.
You know, several of these people are playing an instrument tonight for the first or second time ever. And so these young people have just started picking up instruments and saying, how does this work? And they're teaching each other how to play the instrument that they play. They all come in with their forte, or the thing that they're good at. Vocals, piano, guitar, and what we tell them is, okay, that's your main instrument or your main job. Now, what else can you do? And you'll see this afternoon we have tambourines and ukuleles and mandolins, and whatever that song needs, we just hand an instrument to somebody. And what I really appreciate about these young people is there's no backup in them. There's like, okay, and they're teaching themselves and they're teaching each other how to play that instrument for that song. And I tell singers that if you're just a singer, we need to find something else for you to do, whether that be running sound or playing the drums or whatever that is. Music has been a big part of my life and it's a big part of their lives, and we just want to share that with other people.
4-H, it's another place for me to get out and know kids my age and learn more and play music and everything that I do.
That'll do it for us this week. Remember, you can find us anytime at sunup.okstate.edu and also follow us on YouTube and social media. I'm Lyndall Stout. Have a great week, everyone, and remember, Oklahoma agriculture starts at sunup.